Today's video is brought to you by Florida Tampa, a Tampa cigar classic handmade by Serafin de Cuba. Hey guys, welcome to this edition of Cigar Chat. I'm over here with my buddy Cohiba Steve.
What's up, guys?
We were having a conversation a little while ago, just for shits and giggles. He's a huge Mets fan, and he was telling me
Let's
about.
not talk about the Mets this year. We're done.
They're not having a good
We
season.
just had a huge sell-off. Verlander's gone. Scherzer's gone.
Did that happen?
It happened today, Verlander, yeah.
Shit.
So, biggest payroll in Major League Baseball history, right down the tubes.
Wow.
But we're talking about Tampa baseball today.
But I'm going to fire up one of my cigars here. But Cohen, the owner of the Mets, he's a huge proponent of getting a winner, right? I mean, he's...
Yeah, he wants a long-term winning team, winning organization. But
Is it safe to
the
say
short-term
that...
goal of having the largest payroll didn't quite work this year.
Is it safe to say, though, that he's like the modern-day Steinbrenner, you think? Like, he's all about, like, paying and getting that team, right?
Well, in the short term, yes, but in the long term, he wants to have a sustainable farm system and bring up homegrown talent. So
That's phenomenal.
That's in the works. So
That's huge. But the Mets have always had, like, a lot of great talent on the farm that they've brought up.
pitching usually it was always pitching. A lot of
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of pitchers,
God.
I mean, just thinking of Tampa. We were talking about Tampa. Doc Gooden from Tampa.
Local guy. That's just it, guys. We're talking about
That's what we were talking
Tampa's
about.
baseball history. And here's my Tampa Bay Rays hat, by the way, because
That's
they
a
are
vintage Rays hat.
This is a Rays one. Yeah, it's from the '90s, man.
Yeah.
I just wore it to the stadium the other day.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't know this, and that's what me and Steve were like. Well, maybe we should bring it to other people's attention. I want to say the magic number is 87, guys, but I can look it up and be certain. But Tampa, Florida has given more baseball players than any other part of the country. And I want to say it's about 87 players. Funny thing is, though, the reason that that's the case is because the connection between Cuba and Tampa back in the 1800s was so large, so huge, that you had a boat basically every day as a ship would come from Havana to Tampa. And it brought cigar makers. And this is in the 1800s. So by default, as a result of that, a lot of baseball players came from Cuba, which the game was taken to Cuba in the 1860s, I want to say, by American sailors took the game to Cuba. So this is really kind of quirky and interesting to understand, but by default, okay, Cuba had baseball before some places in the United States. That's the point I'm trying to make. And also by default, Tampa, which was at the time kind of an extension of Cuba, especially in the cigar making business or world, those same guys came here to Tampa because of the cigar trade to make cigars in Ybor City and in West Tampa. And because of that, they brought the game of baseball with them. What does that translate to 100 years down the road? Community. It's all about community because those guys came here. Some of them, like Al Lopez, Tampa legend. He played for the Brooklyn Robins and then the Brooklyn Dodgers because that's what it became. And then he was a coach for the White Sox and Cleveland Indians.
Indians. Okay.
Yeah. He was a manager for them, very successful manager. But some of the guys that played with him during that time, they did not make it to the majors. But what did they end up doing, guys? They just loved the game of baseball. So what did they end up doing? They donated their time in local organizations. Little League, West Tampa Little League is legendary. Some of them, Pop Cuesta, local guy. He was the coach of Jefferson High School, the Dragons. Tino Martinez and all these guys. They all came up through that same, circuit, I guess you could say. So there's a strong history in the Tampa area for baseball because by default by Cuba. And other places in the United States, I'm not going to mention any places, but some places in the Midwest and other remote areas too, they didn't get baseball until much later. But Tampa was fortunate enough that they got it because of the Cuba connection.
Right, and it extends from not just Tampa, but around the whole Tampa Bay region.
Sure.
St. Petersburg, we had Al Lang Field.
Right, still there actually.
Yeah, it was
it's been repurposed now.
Repurposed now.
Yeah.
I think they play soccer in there now.
They play soccer.
But I remember as a kid going to Al Lang Field and seeing the Mets. The Mets were playing there. They were sharing the stadium with the Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals.
Wow.
So both of those teams played at Al Lang Field. I remember the '86 Mets.
What a team! Mookie Wilson,
Keith
Hernandez, Darryl Strawberry,
Carter, all those guys.
Ray Knight.
Yeah.
And the pitching, Sid Fernandez.
Yeah, but Doc Gooden, we talked about earlier, he was on that team.
Kevin Elster was on that team.
Yes.
Dave Magadan, Tampa's very own Dave Magadan, on that team.
Well, no. He was after that.
But he was on the team, he just didn't start that year.
I don't know if he was
86, I think, was his first year.
Well, I thought it was 87. It was his
I believe it was 86.
But anyway, Magadan was in the system.
Well, we could look at it for sure.
And Magadan is Lou Pinella's cousin
and godson.
Godson.
Lou Pinella, local legend, of course. I just saw him last year at the unveiling of the Tampa Al Lopez Museum, which was very...
Now, a Met that was not from Tampa, but from Clearwater, which is right here, was Hojo, Howard Johnson.
Howard Johnson.
Played for Clearwater High School.
Loved Howard Johnson. Number 20 for the Mets.
Yeah. He's always been a big Tampa Bay Bucks fan to this day.
He was a third baseman.
Third baseman, yeah.
Loved him.
Him and Ray Knight were shared the position during
and
that
years
play.
later, Magadan would play third base and, rotate back and forth between third and first when Hojo didn't want to play or whatever. I remember that.
Yeah, Hojo was he's a local legend.
A local legend.
Yeah.
Kevin McReynolds too was on the team. Not a Tampa guy, but he was on the Mets during that time. I followed the Mets quite a bit during those years.
But you were more of a Yankee fan.
I was more of a Yankee fan, but I got to say, I did go to Shea Stadium in 1990 or 91. My Little League coach Gonzalo, if he watches this, he used to take me to the games. So even though I was kind of like, I was a Yankee fan, but I was still a little bit of a Mets lover, I guess, a little bit.
And when I was living in New York, we used to. Grew up a Mets fan because I grew up on Long Island, but I used to go to Yankee games too. And I remember going to games in like 1978, and that's where the Yankees had all those guys.
Oh my God!
Chris Chambliss, Greg Nettles,
Reggie Jackson.
Lou
77
Pinella.
was the 3 home runs in the series.
Yeah. Lou Pinella,
God, sweet Lou.
Mickey Rivers, I remember Mickey Rivers.
Oh my God, Mickey Rivers. And you know what? A Florida guy, Bucky Dent.
Bucky Dent's a Florida guy.
Hialeah.
Yep.
There's a stadium in Hialeah called Bucky Dent Stadium, named after Bucky Dent. So there's a big, strong connection with Florida baseball players and Tampa specifically.
And you were mentioning the Hall of Fame in the Tampa Baseball Hall of Fame is right in Ybor City. Yeah, actually they have the Ybor City, the Al Lopez home, which is where he grew up. Like I said, he was the first major leaguer to come from Tampa, and by default he is also a Hall of Famer. Not for his playing career, he's a really good catcher, but he was inducted into the Hall of Fame because of his managerial years. He was a great manager. After the baseball season, every year he'd come back to Tampa every year, and I got to meet his grandson. And you met Wade Boggs too, didn't you?
Yeah, I met Wade Boggs some years ago.
He's a Tampa guy.
We did an event for him. Great guy, Boggsy. I've met quite a few of the players. Tino Martinez too. Great, legendary
Gary Sheffield.
The chef.
Just keep going on with the names.
Oh my God,
players.
the list goes on and on. But another side story that I was telling you earlier is a big thing that used to happen in Tampa back in the day before my time and yours. The Havana Sugar Kings, which was Cuba's minor league team, they started out in the Florida Class A League, and then by 1959, when Castro took over, they were already AAA International League.
Okay.
They actually won the 1959. They called it the Little World Series. So the 1959 International League World Series was won by the Havana Sugar Kings. And that was the last year that professional baseball was played on the island. Because after that, Castro dismantled everything. Castro's troops came on the field with long guns, and by then the minor leagues and the majors too at the time, they said, you know what, let's get this out of here because it's become a dangerous place for baseball. So the Havana Sugar Kings ended up in Jersey City, New Jersey.
Oh, really?
Out of all places, playing at Roosevelt Stadium. But anyway, anytime they came to Tampa and they played the Tampa Smokers, that was a big deal. And I remember Carlito telling me that his mom and dad actually met at a baseball game that was Havana and Tampa.
Look at that.
And it was like, when they would come to town, it was, I mean, can you imagine? All the Cubans and living in Tampa at the time, what a rivalry they had. And there was a lot of Cubans playing for Tampa and for Havana.
Wow.
So it was a big deal.
And it continues today. We got Pete Alonso on the Mets.
Pete
Our
Alonso.
first baseman. He's went to Plant High School in Tampa.
Legendary guy, man. He's breaking records, all sorts of records.
Since he's come up, I think he leads the majors in home runs.
He's unbelievable.
From the time he started till now, he leads the majors in home runs.
I think he went to Tampa Catholic, didn't he? Or Jesuit?
Or
Jesuit.
Plant High School, and then I think also, was it?
I think it was one.
Yeah.
I think it was one of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or no, or was he University of Tampa too?
Oh, University of Florida. He's a Gator.
He's a Gator.
Yeah.
Tino Martinez was University of Tampa.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a lot of history in the area. Babe Ruth, like you said, during the spring training days, Babe Ruth spent a lot of time in St. Pete and Tampa.
At Al Lang.
At Al Lang. Actually, where the University of Tampa sits today, there's a placard there. And it says that the longest home run ever hit in Tampa history was hit by Babe Ruth at that location.
Oh, really?
Yep, I saw it.
Check that out.
And that was during the spring training days, because prior to like teams having an official spring training home, they would just kind of spend their time between different fields and different areas. Okay. And that was pretty cool too, because like I remember reading like the Chicago Cubs, they would actually go to California to play in Catalina Island. So Santa Catalina Island hosted the Cubs for I don't know how many spring trainings, which is amazing, out of all places. And here in Tampa and St. Pete, they'd come and they'd play a little bit, and then they'd go to Cuba and they'd play down there. And it was just, they were all over the place. And it was really spring training, like real spring training.
And now we have the Tampa Yankees. They've been here for a long time.
Actually, they got renamed the Tarpons.
Tampa Tarpons. And there's history behind that name, too.
Okay, so the Tampa Tarpons were the minor league affiliate of the Cincinnati Reds back in the day. So a couple years ago, right now the Tampa Yankees, like you said, they were the single A rookie league affiliate of the Yankees, and they decided to rename them the Tampa Tarpons. In honor of the old Tampa Tarpons, which back in the day played at Al Lopez Stadium.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Al Lopez Field.
Field, yeah.
Yeah, it's right adjacent to it.
Well, adjacent to it. That property there where the old original Big Sombrero, the original Tampa Stadium was, and then they built the new Raymond James next to it. But somewhere in that vicinity was Al Lopez Field.
Absolutely.
Either right between the two or...
next door.
Yeah, right next door.
I've seen the map, and it's where the Sombrero was kind of where the Yankees are now.
Right.
Well, where the minor league stadium is. And the Sombrero was a little bit further this way, so it's still in the same general area.
Right.
Just a little
the Yankees, the Steinbrenner Field is across the street, but the Yankees have a practice field on that site adjacent to.
It's a beautiful complex what they've done there.
That whole area.
It's a beautiful complex how they redid it. But back in the day, like you just mentioned, the Tampa Tarpons were the minor league team for the Cincinnati Reds, which used to have their spring training in Al Lopez Field. And funny thing is, Al Lopez went. I think it was during the White Sox. It was either during the White Sox years or the Sox years that he was managing the team. And he goes to Al Lopez Field, which had already, been created, to play a game against the Cincinnati Reds. Well, wouldn't you know, he was a very fiery, Spaniard, Cuban guy, He, Tampano, like they like to say. And he had a temper just like Lou Piniella. And he gets into a heated argument with the umpire. And the umpire's true story. He says, "I'm kicking you out of here. You got to get the hell out of here." And he looks at the umpire. He says, "You can't kick me out of here. This stadium's got my name on it." So I thought that was really cool.
Oh, shit.
And I got a picture of Al Lopez on the wall, his autograph and stuff. He's been gone for a few years, but he's definitely a legendary man here in Tampa. And his childhood home is, like Steve said, the Tampa Baseball Museum now.
Baseball Museum.
And you can
Ybor City.
see, if you go there, which I thought was unbelievable. And my friend Mario Nunez from the Tampa Native Show, I'm sure he'll look at this later and he's going to chime in on this. But Mario was there that day too when they did the opening of the museum.
Did the dedication.
They did the dedication. And somebody here in Tampa, I don't know who it was, donated a collection of baseballs, all autographed by the 87 members, the 87 major leaguers that we've had. That's unbelievable. And it's sitting right there. You'll see it on a wall. The 87 guys are in that collection. Wow. Like you said, Lou Piniella, Wade Boggs, Dave Magadan. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And it's just unbelievable. And most of them have had pretty good careers, I would like to say. But again, it goes back to the whole community thing.
Right.
It's just one generation. Like I said, if some of those guys that played with Lopez didn't make it to the majors, they donated their time in Little League or the local, Pony League and high school. And, 100 years later, that's the result of what you got.
I'm sure a lot of their parents and grandparents and aunts, uncles worked in the
cigar trade.
In the cigar industry.
As a matter of fact, Tino Martinez, his grandfather, his name was Tino Gonzalez, and he was a stripper, I want to say. He stripped tobacco at one of the local factories.
Wow.
And yeah, some of those guys, most of them, Al Lopez's brothers and father, they all worked in the tobacco business. As a matter of fact, I remember reading his book, which is a phenomenal book. Singletary wrote the book, Paul Singletary. And he said it in the book, because he basically wrote the biography of his life, right, that the reason he got into playing baseball is because he did not want to work in the cigar business. Because let's be honest, guys, this is not for everybody. And especially during the early 1900s, it was labor-intensive work. It still is, obviously. But Al Lopez became a baseball player. So he went and he did a tryout at one of the local tryouts that they did. And then he became a semi-pro, and then he went to the minors, and little by little he worked his way up. But that's how it was. I mean, back in those days, I remember reading in the book, there was a thing called barnstorming. You know what the barnstormers were, right?
Yeah.
They basically would, go to different towns, and they'd work, playing baseball, very little money, and then they'd go from one town to the other. And then a lot of these guys, with time, they got picked up on professional teams. And that's like what happened in Field of Dreams in the movie, remember?
Yeah.
Some of those guys on the team, they were barnstorming, like Moonlight Graham and all that, So, is there anything else you want to add?
No, just great revisiting all that history. We just got a little conversation about baseball, and it turned into Tampa history and
and again, cigars.
Cigars, and
because you cannot talk about Tampa history without mentioning cigars or baseball.
Baseball.
Yeah, they're still intertwined. And sadly enough, Cuba was a big proponent of the whole thing, but of course Castro came around and screwed everything up for everybody, for my generation, my dad's generation, of course. But luckily enough, you can't take the history away. That part is still ingrained in the fabric of the city of Tampa.
That's true.
And baseball.
So when you light your next cigar, think of Tampa and baseball and all the history that's intertwined between the cigar industry and the baseball legacy in Tampa.
And I'll be hoping that your Mets get somewhere,
Well, I'm pulling for the Rays.
But it looks like the Rays are going to be the team to beat this year.
Yeah,
I think
they're in second place, but they're going to be in the playoffs.
And there's a few Cubans on the team. They got help me out here, Randy.
Yeah,
Rosarena and Yonder, right?
Yeah.
Yep, those are our two Cubans. And there's a bunch of other Spanish guys too. There's one guy, they picked him up from the Mexican League. Remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They gave him like the minor league minimum. The guy's a phenom. He's unbelievable. I've been to 2 games this year. One here in Tampa, St. Pete at the Trop, and one in Seattle recently when they
you were in Seattle.
They killed the Mariners 15-4 or something. It was a blowout, but we had a hell of a great time up there.
Yeah.
Beautiful ballpark. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys.
Take care.
Quick little video. Hope you enjoyed it.
Enjoy a cigar.
Happy smokes.